The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, good people of the Bronx and beyond. Welcome to A Life in Art. For artists, balancing the struggles of practical life and pursuing a dream are par for the course. In this show, we will bring you engaging and personal conversations with actors, dancers, singers, musicians, and other performing artists who you may not be familiar with. People who have been working on their craft for at least a decade and are at a crossroads where passion meets necessity, but whose talent and quality of work cannot be denied. This is A Life in Art. Welcome everyone, my name is Henry Ovalles and I'm your host for A Life in Art. We'll discuss creativity and inspiration with our guest artists, but also ask questions such as, how much longer can I continue to pay rent and perform for the love of the art? Can I feel fulfilled without my art? Our guest today is an actress, director, dancer, editor, producer, and TV host in her own right. She has also been described as scary smart, and I have the good fortune of calling her my very close friend. Today we learn about Christina Pagán's life in art. All right, we're here in the studio with my good friend Christina. Christina, thanks so much for agreeing to be on the show.
Well, of course. Why would I not be?
Yes. So, full disclosure, we should mention that you're actually a producer on the show, the lead producer.
Absolutely.
And there was some back and forth, at least in my mind, as to whether or not it would be incestuous to have you on. But I think that you have a prolific career in the arts that the world needs to know about. So
all these wonderful vocabulary words you're throwing out there. That's great.
yeah, I was looking at the dictionary right before. So I think it was important to have you on and discuss your journey.
Well, thank you. I'm proud to be here. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, indeed. We'll see how it works out with the editing if you end up editing this episode, what you take out and what you leave in.
All right, I'm ready for you. Shoot.
All right.
Let's go.
So let's just start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, Christina?
I was born in the Bronx, but I was raised in Queens, South Ozone Park, Queens, mother and father. And I'm the only child. So
Only child.
Only child.
Got it. And your parents are both Puerto Rican descent or actually?
My dad was born on the island, but he grew up here. My mother is of Puerto Rican parents.
Got it.
Grew up in the Bronx as well.
Right, and you're an only child, and your parents are no longer together.
Not at the moment, no.
Got it.
Their divorce was finalized earlier this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, but they had been separated for...
They've been separated for the better part of a decade.
Got it, but the papers just were put in now. And did that have any sort of effect of you on you? How old were you when that happened? When the separation happened?
I was about 21 or so.
Okay, so you were older.
Yeah, I was older. I mean, I had known that there were things going on with my parents. They're two very different people, and sometimes opposites attract, but how long can that really last, you know?
Got it.
So I was aware of things.
Right, but you're cool with both of them, you have a good relationship with both your mom and
Absolutely.
your
I
dad.
mean, it took a while for me to have a good relationship with my mother, just because of my upbringing. She was the one who was around more, because my parents split time. They had a schedule, so my dad worked overnights for 911.
Oh, okay.
And my mom was a nurse, so she worked during the daytime, and dad was home. He'd be asleep, but I'd be at school, so it really wouldn't matter. He'd be there to pick me up or be home,
Right.
and then mom would come later. So, and then he'd be off at work. So mom was a disciplinarian. So dad was asleep, mom was the one who was always cracking the whip, sometimes literally. So, you know, it was a pretty contesting relationship.
I can't imagine what behavior you would be having that the whip would have to be cracked.
Oh, you know.
How did they meet, do you know?
Yeah, I do. My mother apparently was friends with my uncle or acquaintances with my uncle, and my father had just been recently divorced from his first wife, and he introduced them, and they hit it off.
Got it. So your mother was your father's second marriage. Any kids from his previous marriage? No. So you're an only child.
I'm
through
the
and
only
through.
one that we know of.
Okay, very well. Nice. And so you mentioned, your parents' occupations. Did they have any artistic pursuits earlier in their lives?
Actually, you know what? It's funny because my parents are creative people. They're very smart
Right.
in their own right.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting both of them, so that's, yeah.
My mom is a graduate of Lehman as well from the
Okay.
nursing program. And she used to sing in chorus when she went to high school, and like loves musicals. My parents love going to Broadway and things like that. Apparently, what they used to do back in the 70s was they'd put on their own little radio plays, and I found these tapes.
Oh, that's amazing.
They did their own little radio plays and produced them, and then when I was a kid, you know, cameras, home videos, like were really taking off, and my dad took those radio plays or took his version and decided he was going to do little skits.
Oh, wow.
So I remember some of my earliest memories of doing.
So he cast you in the
yeah,
skit. Oh, that's
yeah. There
amazing.
was a CMP TV news. There's video of this somewhere. I have to find it. My dad has it, and like Dad would do his own little skits, and it was.
Oh man, I have to see this. That's amazing. And what a great, I mean, to be able to listen to your parents, you know, even before you were born with these radio plays, that must have been quite a...
They're pretty raunchy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how old were you when you discovered them or were allowed to listen to them?
Oh, I was probably like a teenager or so.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, so that came later.
Yeah, it came a little later.
And where did you go to school and all of that?
I started out in public school. My parents had me in like pre-kindergarten, and then I went into an honors program, sort of what they call the Astor program, at PS 124 in Queens.
Got it.
And I was there for a little bit, and then they took me out and I went to a Catholic school.
Ah.
So I was there for a while. We were a Catholic family, grew up Catholic. I was an altar server, everything.
Got it.
Very involved in the church. Yeah.
Did you do any performances in the church or?
I was part of choir for a while, but extracurricularly, I was, from the age of 4, I was in dance classes.
Got it.
I was always dancing, singing around the house. As a little kid, my parents had gotten me the microphones and things to play with. Michael Jackson was like my idol, and I was dancing all over the place, and my parents recognized that, and they put me into dance classes right away.
Right, yeah.
As soon as I could.
All right, just continue to stimulate that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. They never wanted to squash my dreams in that way.
Got it. So was there a passion artistically that came before another? Like, was dancing your first love, or was it all just an amalgam there?
I think it was an amalgam, but it was more like dancing, singing. The acting, I hadn't really thought about that. I was young, but dancing and singing, absolutely, because it was Michael. I was like, I wanted to be Michael Jackson, man.
Right, and this would have been in the 80s when Michael Jackson, he's, you know, one of my favorite artists as well, but, you know, that's when he was really, really big.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have dreams of a sea in like a sea of lights, sea of lighters, because they didn't have cell phones then, a sea of lighters in a stadium, you know, singing my songs or dancing with me. Like, that was my dream when I was really, really little.
All right, so you started in dance school when you were 4, and then what was the progression there as far as artistic schooling? It was
dance school, and I did ballet and tap. Then it went to jazz. And then as I grew older, they added other things. There was street jazz, or what they called hip hop, but it really wasn't hip hop as our friend Maurice Dean would call it. So it was street jazz. Then I did lyrical modern. I started doing ballroom. I did competitions. And then in school, you know, they did the oratorical contests, and I was a big nerd. Right. So not only did I do that, but I also did sports, and then I did very well in school. My mother pushed me, and I did these oratorical contests where we had to learn speeches and recite them, and that's what I did. So like one of my favorites was learning "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman. That was one of my favorites, and I also did the Gettysburg Address at some point. And I was a writer. I wrote poetry. I wrote short stories. With my dolls at home, I would put on like plays. I would write scripts for like 90210 or whatever as a kid and act them out with my dolls.
Wow, so you were all in with everything, pretty intense even as a kid, you know.
I was focused, man.
Yeah, I would take you know, the wrestling action figures, whatever, and put on, you know, little stories with them, so there's that similarity.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're just starting to scratch the surface. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper when we come back. Now we know your genesis, and then we'll start talking about, you know, what's happening now and what's going on in the future, and you getting into TV and film producing and editing and all of that. So we have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more from Christina Pagán when we return.
We finally bought a place.
You seriously have enough saved to do that?
We've been putting a little aside each month.
So at the end of the month, we have nothing left to save. How is my account overdrawn?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
Teachers today are finding new ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable.
Welcome back to Life in Art. We're here with the multi-talented Christina Pagán, my friend. So we started talking about how you started in the arts and all of that. So what happens then? You went to Catholic school. Where did you go to college?
Well, first I'll take it back a little bit just for you.
Yeah,
So
please do.
in high school, I went to Townsend Harris High, which is a specialized high school in Queens. It's located on Queens College. So there I was part of literally my first play, specifically acting. You know what I mean? Like
Right, because before then it had been dancing and singing.
stuff, and like in school, in grade school, you do Christmas pageants and stuff like that. But I don't really count that. So I was in my first actual musical, Pippin, in my freshman year in high school.
That's why you love Pippin so much.
That's why I love Pippin so much. And the crazy thing about that was, so I told you I did sports.
Right.
So I tried out for the softball team, and I got onto the JV team as a pitcher. But
So you're pretty good.
that was all right. And then so like the rehearsal time for the show and the practice time for softball were concurrent. So I had to make a choice.
Wow.
And I made the choice for theater. And wouldn't you know, after that year, they stopped having a drama club.
way.
Yeah, drama theater was out.
Were you able to go back to softball, or at that point,
No,
since you had made
at
the
that
decision?
point, yeah, I was past the season, and then I never tried again for the
Oh,
team.
man.
And then our school, we developed. There was this movie in the '80s called Sing. So then we developed our own theater stuff. So it was a competition of like each class putting on their own show.
Got it.
And that was something that really stimulated us until finally senior year we did Little Shop of Horrors. And so I went to high school, Townsend Harris High, because that was the only public high school that my mother was going to let me go to.
Right.
She said, you either get in here or you're going to go to the Mary Louis Academy or some other Catholic high school. And I was like, no, we're not doing that again.
You were done with that?
I was done.
Why?
I was so over it. I was like, the uniforms and the whole bit. I was like,
Was it an all-girls school, or was it mixed?
all girls school.
Well, that would do it also, I'm
Right?
sure.
No thanks. Because she said to me, you know what, the performing arts high schools are all well and good, but I want you to have a good basis in practical stuff. I want you to have a good basis in basic knowledge, math, sciences, all that stuff. And when you get to college, you can pursue anything that you want. So when I started looking at colleges, and I knew exactly, I was like, I want to do theater, I want to perform. So I auditioned all over the place, and I got into a few places. I got into NYU, I got into Fordham.
Right.
But they were all very expensive. And granted, both my parents worked and whatever, but finances for things like that are incredible. So I ended up coming to Lehman College. I was part of the first class of what is now called the Macaulay's Honors College at Lehman. So I got a free ride, and it's been incredible. I don't regret the decision ever.
Right, and that was a good experience for you, right?
I mean, I met people like you, right? We're still friends.
Yeah, and still working, and we've been able to, help each other out with our passions and get things such as this show, off the ground. So
Exactly.
So that's been great. So musical theater specifically is what you would consider your forte, or just your favorite, or after you dug into more straight roles, let's say, in college, did the passion sort of balance itself out a little bit more?
Musical theater has my heart just because I feel like my life is a musical.
Okay, explain.
There's a song for everything. Like you give me a word or a phrase, and I could probably find a song that fits that, or a cadence that fits it. So
Right.
I love dancing down the street in Manhattan.
See, now that's interesting that you should say that, and that you should say it to me, because it's no secret to you that I'm not a big fan of musical theater. I have a great deal of respect for musical theater performers that are able to, the triple threat, act, sing, and dance, because I'm not very talented in the singing and dancing
you can hold a tune.
Well, that's up for debate. But part of it, to me, is that a lot of the musical theater that I've seen doesn't seem organic, and a lot of the songs feel corny and all of that. But I know that when musical theater is good, it's good when the song actually does, like the person just has to burst out into song because
They're so full of emotion that
right, exactly, it has to come out. And I've seen that, but I've seen too little of that to really, get behind it. And it also has to do probably with, I didn't grow up with musical theater. I grew up, at 12 years old doing Strindberg and plays like that. So that, I'm sure had something to do with it.
Probably.
But you're talking about that in your life, you do see it as a musical, that you feel like in your real everyday life, you do want to burst out into song and into, dance.
Absolutely. I mean, there's not been a time in my life that I've been going through some sort of emotion, whether it's strife or happiness, that I haven't found a song that someone else has produced or I need to have music in my life. Music, I like to write that music is my savior and dance is how I worship.
Right.
That's one of my favorite phrases.
Oh, that's an awesome phrase.
Yeah.
So we've established that you're a very intense and focused person.
Sometimes.
with the sports and with with all of the performing arts. Talk to me about, was it your first experience directing? You directed a production of the Vagina Monologues at Lehman, and that was much more than just directing the actors, which you had some very talented actors, including now Academy Award nominated actress Gabourey Sidibe was in that production.
That's right.
But I was even more so impressed with just your coordinating of all the logistics about selling lollipops in the lobby and making sure that you're going to fill a 500-seat theater. So talk to me about that experience, about being in control, on this artistic aspect directing, but also just as a producer and what that did to you.
Well, you know what, I never want to take all the credit for that because I had a really good team of people who were behind me on that. Eddie Torres, our good friend.
Who was a guest on this show.
Right, he was my assistant director and he was very, very helpful. When I had to go do some of that extra producing stuff, he would run rehearsal for me. And he worked with some people when our schedules didn't coordinate, because we were still in college at that point. So I had classes,
right.
And some people were free when I had a class. So he would take over, and then I had I'll take credit for the fact that I did a good job in finding the right people to delegate to.
Got it.
So I had people who were doing press for me, really promoting the show. My mother helped with making those lollipops and reaching out to, and I helped reach out to the charities that we were trying to.
Different organizations, yeah.
Right. And everyone just came together, and it was a bonding experience for a lot of people in that particular production. And we had a moment during one of the rehearsals where we spoke about our own personal experiences as women and what that means, and because that show is and what we did, we raised money for V-Day,
right.
which is to prevent abuse for women, right? And so we spoke about that. Each of us had our own experiences with that, whether it was personal or was second party or so on and so forth. And then we all created our own T-shirts. Like I still have mine, and a few people who were in that cast still have theirs. And it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, that would explain the depth of that production and of you as an artist. I think was on display there.
I was pleased
right.
with that.
As was everyone who saw it. All right, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back with what you're doing now. We'll talk about film editing and some of those things that you've been doing behind the camera. We'll be back with more of A Life in Art after this break. Stay tuned. Cool.
Awesome.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
Today, 1 out of every 4 American kids is Hispanic. Many of the future doctors who will care for us, the scientists and entrepreneurs of our country, can be your kids. And the Hispanic Scholarship Fund helps you prepare, plan, and pay for your kids' college education.
And we're back on with Christina Pagán on A Life in Art. So CP, we left off talking about sort of your theatrical experiences, your experience directing. So when did the idea to go behind the scenes and start working in TV and film come to you?
Well, I had started working behind the scenes in theater during our tenure here at Lehman.
Right.
And I enjoyed that. But also while here at Lehman, my dad used to do some video stuff, like I mentioned before, and he edited some videos at home. So I kind of had that experience, and I decided that I wanted to take a class here because I was double majoring in theater and mass communication.
Right.
So I took a nonlinear editing course, and I enjoyed it. I loved the tedium and how much control is my control freak in me, how much you have over that. So I started doing that mostly. And I had edited videos for Hip Hop Theory, which is a group that I was in with Maurice Dean and company. And then at one point I said, you know what, I want to do this more. I want to do an intensive course to really get into it. And then I looked at the price tag for the intensive course, and then I looked at the price tag for getting a master's degree, and they were pretty comparable.
Really?
And I said to myself, well, the master's degree in the long run can give me a few more avenues as opposed to the intensive class.
Right.
I mean, the intensive class would have been all well and good, and I can also use that, but the master's degree now has me here teaching at Lehman.
Right, it's a terminal degree, so now you can, do
Right.
different things with that.
Mhm.
Huh.
And I met some great people at CCNY when I did my
That's
master's.
where you got
there.
your master's in. What is your master's in specifically?
It's a Master's of Fine Arts in Media Production with a concentration in editing.
Got it. And editing is, since then, is sort of, has that been your bread and butter?
It was for a while. When I first started at BronxNet, I started as an arts fellow, and I was specifically doing editing for arts programming. But I started becoming more involved in the production end, back end stuff, behind the scenes, which I like doing as well. I mean, it's great to be involved in every aspect as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because I like to be a Jill of all trades.
Yeah, as starting from when you were a kid, just doing a little bit of this, a little bit of
Know
that. So we've heard in this interview that you're a very practical person as far as deciding to come to Lehman as opposed to NYU or some other program like that, and then to go with the master's program instead of the intensive program, laying it out.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the struggle as far as how do you pay rent and all of that? Do you have that all under control?
I think for now I do.
Mm-hmm.
I made a decision recently to take a step back from full-time work and really start focusing on being creative and pursuing what I really like to do. Because I was working full-time and I had benefits and all of that, and as wonderful as that is, I wasn't really fulfilling myself. I wasn't fulfilling the creativity. I did a few shows, I did some off-Broadway, I got into the union, I've done some things, but that always ended.
Right.
And once it ended, it was kind of a depressing point, and
right, you
all
get
this
that
elation of being
right.
on stage and all of that you get, and then all of a sudden it's over.
Yeah, it just falls off.
And then I'm back behind a desk.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that experience, how you recently got your Joint Actors Equity. It was through a musical show. What was the name of it?
Back to the musicals, right?
Yes,
it was
indeed.
The Zombies, a musical.
Right, so it was a limited run. You enjoyed the experience, rehearsed, got to perform, but then the run, even though it was limited, got cut even shorter than it was supposed to.
Yeah, it did. Unfortunately, the ticket prices when they started were way too high. It was the wrong season. I mean, it was a fun show to do, and I met some wonderful people. It's incredible the amount of talent that's out there in the world.
And then you got your equity card out of it.
And I got my equity card out of it, and I don't regret that either. I mean, I haven't made really good use of my equity card. I'd like to.
But it's something else that you have in your back pocket,
Exactly. So it's part of, now that I have the time to,
right.
Once I have a little bit more time, there's not enough hours in the day,
yeah,
or at least not enough functional hours in the day. I wanted to make use of this card and go out and audition, but I also I kick myself all the time. I kick myself down. I prevent myself. I self-sabotage consistently.
Believe me, you're not the only artist that does that or has done that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that happens there. We've been talking a lot about how practical you are, how a bit of a control freak you might be. So as far as you being fulfilled, how about on the other aspects of your life? Artistically, you've talked about how maybe you would want to be on stage a little bit more, although you don't like the feeling of the fall off that comes right after that, the elation, and then have to come down. What's going on otherwise in your personal life and your spiritual life? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's always such a hodgepodge of emotions and non-emotions.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is. I mean,
such is life.
Such is life, right? And it's My Life the Musical, which I kind of want to write as well. I think I'm going to get Eddie. I talked to Eddie about writing the score for
All right.
My Life the Musical.
I'll do something. I'll help produce or
there
something.
There you go. Yes. In my personal life, I mean, my personal life is all over the place. And honestly, it's great to have that. And I said to myself, I got into a relationship not too long ago, and I knew it was doomed from the start, but I decided that I was going to enjoy my life any way that I could. I was going to enjoy the moment,
right,
and not worry about too much into the future. I wanted to enjoy that experience, or any experience, for that moment as long as I could, and let it happen. And I try and use that philosophy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because I'm also a giant pessimist. And
why? You have so much going for you.
It's so overwhelming.
You perplex me to no end.
I'm a perplexing person.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a paradox of perplexity.
Indeed, and a tongue twister.
There you go.
Okay, and how about your spiritual life? What's going on there?
Oh, so I told you I started out as a Catholic. I was very heavy into the church and all that. I even considered being a nun for a while. But
Well, you played one in Nonsense.
That's right, Sister Robert Ann, right up my alley.
Yes, musical theater. Here we go again.
No, but the character too. She was kind of not your typical nun.
That's right. That's true. Yeah.
She was
had an edge to her.
She had an edge to her.
As do you.
Right, sharp edge. But I fell off of Catholicism, and I'm kind of in between feelings. So I tried to do a little bit of the like earthy spiritual Wicca stuff, and that's kind of cool because I definitely feel that there's a power in everyone, in your own soul. Like everyone has their own personal power that manifests, and if you focus it in the right direction, if you really believe that you can focus in the right direction, you can make that power work for you. And that's not necessarily a god or something. That's you pushing forward. But am I sure that there is no God? Most of the time, I don't know. I don't care. I don't think about it.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, that doesn't exist. Sometimes I'm like, well, maybe there is something bigger than all of us.
Right, but you don't really consider that a strong part of your daily life.
No, I don't. I don't worry about praying and meditating in that way.
All right, and then talking about your personal life and your spiritual life and your art. Do you ever use that in your art through, the films that you decide to work on or the pieces that you decide to, act in or?
Well, I don't know about the spiritual life. I definitely use parts of my personal life, and when I do characters or whatever, one of the things that I used to use all the time to when you have to manipulate yourself to cry, I used to use the thought of my friend's father when he died. That was a very specific moment in my life that felt like everything just crushed, like my entire world was crushed. And then I try and I use different parts of what has happened to me and relate it to the character. But I don't, it depends on the situation, I think, really.
Yeah.
I mean, but what when I write, because I have a few things that I'm interested in writing or that I want to write, I definitely draw from personal experience and those questions, those bigger questions that come in the world. There's a few pieces that I'm going to explore that are very personal to me and very painful, can be very painful. But I'm willing to look into other aspects of
and art is just such a great conduit for that to explore those themes.
Exactly.
So we're out of time here. Actually, just the last quick question. So are you happy with your journey in the arts? Is it something that you would recommend for someone else to follow if they had that passion?
I'm always for people following their passions, finding what you're good at. And Robert De Niro said recently, passion should always trump practicality or something like that. He said something very similar to that. And I think that's absolutely true. Everyone should follow your passion, even if it's fixing cars. Follow that passion.
That's great, and it's great specifically coming from you from what we've learned today, I think. And that's a great way, I think, to end the show. So that's all the time we have today. Thanks to Christina for sharing her life and art with us. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. We'll be back with more stories from emerging artists when we return with a life in art.
Did you know? I didn't know that.
Well, I knew some things, but yeah, just to hear it expressed in this manner. Yeah.
You heard it from third party or something?
No. But we hadn't talked about it in this way, I don't think.